thank you everyone for joining us. This is a very special, as they are all very special, talk for this month. Of course, it is June, so it is Pride Month. It's many things for this month as well that we're representing and celebrating, but of course, a big one is Pride. And so we are really happy to have a full panel this month of a lot of amazing folks. So without further ado, we're going to jump in and just briefly introduce our panel here, and then we're going to jump right into some questions. If you have questions, if you're here live with us and you have questions, please post them in the Q&A, but feel free. It is a live and safe and brave space in the chat, so feel free to jump in with any comments or share any anecdotes. You're more than welcome. And so we have first, we have people from all across the country, which is so cool. So Joan Cox. Joan Cox is a creative director, some graphic design. I believe you're down in Maryland. Is that correct, Joan?
I am. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland.
Love Baltimore. I always reference things to sports, so Camden Yards is there. It's a nice stadium.
Yes, it is.
And Joan, so tell us, how long have you been in BNI?
So I've been in my current chapter for 2 years, representing the Maryland LGBT Chamber of Commerce in the nonprofit seat. And before COVID, I was in another chapter as a graphic designer, which I still run my own business for over 2 years as well. So a good 4 years plus, going on 5 years.
Fantastic. Love it. Well, thanks for being here with us. Now we're going to shoot over to the Pacific Northwest. I think that counts, right? Oregon counts as that. So Keenan Bloom. So Keenan, thanks for joining us. Craniosacral therapy, if I said that correctly.
You did.
And, yep. And so Keenan, how long have you been in BNI?
I joined BNI in 2019. I was a member of a chapter in Boulder, Colorado, where I was for 2 years. And then we moved here a couple of years ago, and I joined my chapter here relatively soon. So maybe about 2 years in the chapter here in Corvallis, Oregon. Fantastic. And I believe you are a director, well, coach, chapter success coach in Core. Exactly.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you for helping our members.
Pleasure.
Yes, up next we have Dr. Saida Tapia. So Dr. Saida, there you go. Probably just fresh off working on someone's back. Hello.
Hi.
Out in Colorado, in Denver, in our newly launched bilingual chapter in Colorado. So we love it. So Dr. Saida, how long have you been in BNI?
I started May this year with the bilingual chapter. So far, I love it. I feel really appreciative about the skills that it teaches people, and I'm super excited to be here. So thank you.
Yes, and a fantastic education coordinator, by the way.
Thank you.
So yes. So we're really happy to have Dr. Saida here. And then Tommy Whitehead, who I just met in Miami at our U.S. National Conference. So Tommy, hello.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic. I'm really happy to see you again and have you here. So just a little, how long have you been in BNI?
I have been in BNI for 8 months, and it has been an incredible 8 months. It's been a great organization to be with. They've already offered me a director consultant role here in Tampa. So it's been pretty wild ride.
Love it. Love to hear that. And then of course, last but not least, my dear friend, Jessica Faltot. Hello. There's so many pages.
Hey, how are you? I'm very glad to be here. And I think I know Tommy. I met you in Miami. Nice.
Yes, I was just about to say the connection is that we were all in Miami together. So Jessica is a phenomenal senior launch coach here in for Core, based out of Dallas, Fort Worth, and also covers Oklahoma. So how long have you been doing all of that, Jessica? How long have you been involved in BNI?
I've been involved in BNI off and on for over 6 years. I have been doing this role for 2 years, 3 months, and a few days. Who's counting?
Fantastic. I know you are. I know you are. That's why your precision is key in what you do. Awesome. So we're going to continue to get to know all of you. Everyone here can see, make sure that you're taking note of their email addresses, and we're going to make sure that you have them again at the end. But we're going to jump right into our questions. So, of course, and not everyone is going to answer every single question, but definitely want to hear from some of you. How has your experience as an LGBTQIA plus business owner shaped your overall entrepreneurial journey? So who would like to start us off? and I can volunteer someone, which I'd love to do.
No one's jumping in? Come on,
Go for it. Go for it.
I'll jump in. You might expect a negative answer on this, but mine is actually really positive. So before I was a business owner, and even before I was 100% out, I was fortunate enough to work in 2 different corporate environments where my immediate supervisor was also LGBTQ. And so that sort of enabled me to come out a little bit more, not entirely in some cases, but in that work environment. And then once I became my own business owner, I run a graphic design company. I got involved immediately with NGLCC and got involved with actually helping to found, what's the word, to create the Maryland chapter of the, National Chambers of Commerce. So I just came out like flags blazing, like, hey, I'm a queer business owner and I'm going to use this and promote to other LGBT business owners. Like, hey, do you need design services? Like, work with me. I understand you. So I've leveraged it as a plus and a positive, and trying to help other business owners grow their businesses because I happen to provide a service that works that way. So it's been a good thing for me.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, I mean, right, because there's a lot of other identities that do that, right? There's the SWAMBA, right? The small business, like women, minority owned businesses. So people want people to know that they are either, queer owned or queer friendly businesses, which is really, really important. I know I think twice where I'm putting my dollars. So that's awesome.
Exactly. Purposefully networking within my own community, really.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love to hear that. Does anyone else have anything to add to this?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So it has had an effect on my business. Construction's a little bit of a different industry. It is, people in our industry are still kind of afraid to say anything. I've had colleagues say, or been told, it's okay that you're gay, just don't talk about your family or anything at work. We're in an at-will state here in Florida. This is still kind of happens here. For me, I've announced it. I'm a member of the NGLCC, my local gay chamber. I'm an LGBTQIA, which is nationally recognized gay-owned business. So I put it out there. I say, hey, this is what I do, and the message has been extremely positive. People want to feel like they are working with somebody that's inclusive of everybody. We don't discriminate except with a checkbook. That's how a business should work, right? You have the money to do the services, and we want to provide a good job for you. The situation has been positive for me in that a lot of people want to see gay representation in construction. And so it's wonderful to be able to be standing out there and say, hey, there's a lot of us, they're just kind of afraid to talk about it. So it's really been great to have a lot of people come up to me and say, I never thought that there were so many of us. I never thought that we could be a part of this industry.
Yeah, and I will add, Tommy, because I remember launched a chapter maybe 2 years ago here in Massachusetts, and we had several folks who are LGBTQ, mostly who identify as lesbian. And they had a lot of traits folks, right? But there's always this like bias and assumption, like, oh yeah, women in construction probably identify a certain way, but you don't see it with typically, I think, cisgender men. So when I met you, I was like, this is pretty awesome. And that you're like totally out, and I just think it's fantastic of what you're creating too. So that's really, really cool. I just take one. Jessica, I saw you on mute. I don't know if you had something to add.
No.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to go to the next one.
Let's go to the next one. Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. So in what ways do you feel the business community can better support and create opportunities for LGBTQIA plus entrepreneurs? So I don't know who wants to take that one.
Okay, I'm going to jump in since I was actually thinking what Tommy was saying was really good. That's what I was keying on, and that's what you said. The different industries. I am also an executive coach. I do certified hypnotherapist as well. So it's a big deal to me, the words we speak and the images we hold. And the words that people speak and how how that affects, you know, the positive experiences is fantastic. And I think it was Buckminster Fuller, and I'm getting kind of technical here, but there's some really neat stuff along this line. It says, you know, everyone is born a genius, but the process of living de-geniuses them. And yeah, I think that if we're looking at the business community, how we can better support and create the opportunities in the business community, we need to lay a lot of this down. We need to, you know, look at what's your specialty? What do you do? I love the cranial sacral. I'm sitting here just totally in awe of you know, of that. And I can promise you that this openness is a brand new world to what it used to be. So I think that sometimes we do not celebrate and we do not step up to say, you know what, we're a lot better than we used to be. Now, are we where we should be? Perhaps not. But we are a whole lot better. And it's sometimes, I think that gets lost in the shuffle of the fact that you can have events like this, that we can be in BNI, that we can build communities together that don't have to be segregated, that do not have to be segregated. And there's a chapter in Dallas that used to have to feel separate, that was in Oak Lawn, and it used to be the gay group, right? I mean, it wasn't said that way. But today, if you were to go in there, there are a bunch of wonderful business owners that have diversity, that celebrate each other, that do not, you know, and they invite, not based on, you know, anymore about having to come in and be protective, but to be open and honest so that, you know, that we can embrace doing business, you know, because we absolutely need diversity. And, you know, Margaret Mead said that as well. So I'll look up that quote later, but that's where my head was at.
I'm sure my executive producer is already on that, looking for that quote. Thank you, Steve. No, that's fantastic, Jessica. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, you're absolutely right. The goal, right? The goal is to actually not for me to have be in this profession anymore of DEI, right? Because it would just be in the air. We would just all be together. There wouldn't be a need for it. And so when people are complaining about it, like, why do we have to talk about it? It's because it doesn't impact them, right? You know, do we feel safe? Do we feel like we'll make a difference? Do we feel like we'll get business from somebody? And so a lot of times people do sort of stay in more homogenous groups. So the goal would be to that in reality, you know, ideally we wouldn't have that. So I'm 100% with you. That's where we want to get to, is that equity piece and that belonging piece. But well said, for sure. I don't know if anyone else had something else to add to this. Yes, Dr. Saida.
Yeah, I love what Jessica just said. I want to wrap that in a little bow. One of the things that I think would be super helpful is to have business leaders with interpersonal skills, right? Because I've ran into business leaders who are assigned their position because of their technical skills. And let me tell you, that environment feels really awful. And I do believe that interpersonal skills are the way to create these inclusive environments, because that means that we can hold compassion for the people around us.
That's
Yeah.
so succinct and well said. I love that. Thank you for sharing that too. I got moved from that just now, so thank you.
Yeah. And just to add a little bit more as to why that's important, I want to recognize that being an LGBTQ plus, there's a lot of anxiety involved, that we have to carry the anxiety of being our personal identity, plus the anxiety of being a business owner, plus the anxiety of knowing that we can't speak about these things, and all those things like create such a closed environment, right? That acknowledgement with interpersonal skills is what allows us to start to take off the layers. So that's all.
Yeah, no, 100%. And actually jumping into some of the challenges, the specific challenges or barriers, kind of what you're speaking to. You just said, you know, about that it's tough, right? And for those that don't know, I've said this many times, I'm gay adjacent. I've been sort of maybe questioning at one point in my life, but my mother is a lesbian. And so I'm very passionate around these inclusive conversations. And I know just from my mother being a business owner, and so many different identities, but definitely identifying as lesbian for, you know, a really long time. It's tough, right? It's tough to know when to present that. So I just want to know from any of you, any specific challenges or barriers as an LGBTQIA plus business owner that you believe your non-LGBTQIA plus counterparts may not encounter.
I was recently talking to the dean of a nursing college from a major university. She was giving a presentation, and she says, due to some of the changes here in Florida, they had offered positions to staff members that accepted. And now they've called and says, I don't know if I can move my family to Florida. So it's coming. It's very scary in some states that are really pushing against diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's spilling over to our families. These people want to come here and help with healthcare. We're the #3 most populous state. We're aging like crazy. We are in a healthcare crisis here, and we have qualified talent that wants to come, and all of a sudden, wow, they see something pass that they feel like their family's not going to be safe. Maybe they're not even completely in that space. Maybe, like they said, they're queer adjacent and they're not sure. Their family members are. And so as far as affecting as a business owner where I'm at, it does get a little scary, because am I going to be able to recruit the talent that I need? Maybe they're gay, maybe they're not, but anybody, any color, any race, any religion, they should be able to come and perform a service and a job. And if you're not welcoming, it affects us. We can't get the talent we need.
Wow. Yeah, that is, that's power. There's a lot going on legislation wise. So thank you for bringing light on that, Tommy. I don't know if someone else wanted to say something. I just think about too, just again, even my mom, right? Because she's gonna be 70 next year. She's going blind, and she could retire to Florida, but likely that is not going to be the case, because she'll probably just retire back to her homeland of Jamaica, which I would rather visit anyway. But but yeah, I mean, I think that if we're thinking about this, that is a major issue, right? Because it doesn't just impact you, it can impact your children or the people around you, your employees, or the employees that you're not hiring. So this is a big challenge. Jessica, did you have something to add to this?
I did. Actually, I had a reverse experience where I was on my way. I was spending time in Salt Lake City for business, for self-development stuff. And I'm thinking, oh my God, do I want to go to Salt Lake City? Because I had heard, okay? And I was spending a whole lot of time around Mormons, and I had heard. And I have to tell you what, I'm going to skip to the chase on one side since I said that, is that it has ended up being such an incredibly revolutionary experience. I did not know at the time that the mayor of Salt Lake City was gay. Okay? I did not realize the support and the overwhelming, I mean, these are some of my best friends today. And had I gone with, and I did, we actually had dialogue and a conversation about it, because it did feel, and you have to have courage sometimes. So courage to change the things I can. And, I've spent 44 years in the recovery area. So, we do not have a lot of those boundaries and issues there. But I tell you what, I was duly chastised. I did find the quote from, since I'm going highbrow, Steve, from Margaret Mead that is kind of important. And this is kind of what I've learned over time. It says, if we are to achieve a richer culture, rich in contrasting value, we must recognize the whole gamut of human potentialities, and to weave a less arbitrary social fabric, and in which we can, in which each diverse human gift will find a fitting place. And so I have to really unconsciously aware of where, and am I going to get hurt sometimes? Yeah, but I'd rather be the person that goes in and goes in without that to try and normalize, so that other people who may be afraid aren't afraid.
Yeah. No, that's love it. And
A little Margaret Mead for you, Steve.
love Margaret Mead. No, that was fantastic, Jessica. And the other thing I think about too, when we think of challenges, because we do want to, like you said too, like there's assumptions about how a place would be, right? Because I have this as a Black woman. There are some cities that I'm like, yikes, I won't travel after 6 p.m. there. Like I'll stay in my room. I won't go. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. but that you face risk. And so there's the balance of like, is this safe? Is this okay? And then, and then hopefully that people will embrace you just for you as a human. That's always the goal. But I think of even, another part of that might be an issue that non-LGBTQIA folks don't face, like even pronoun use, right? Thinking about like a lot of times, and I think I'm always, when I'm doing my gender identity workshops, I'm constantly talking about why it matters. It's not like, oh, I don't look like I'm a woman or a man or whatever. No, it's that they know that it's inclusive space. So for anybody that does have a pronoun that may not match what they present as, and I think that's even something like that, or even having a sticker to show that it's a safe space. I think all of these things are things that people don't always think about. They don't have to, right? So that's just something else that I wanted to bring up. So, in this conversation, how important is it for businesses to prioritize DEI, specifically any initiatives, particularly in relation to LGBTQIA plus in the community? Keenan, I'm going to call on you because you've been silent, but I was going to call on you soon anyway for another question, but I want to know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think a little bit about the question previous and connected to this, the thought that I had. So myself, I'm poly, and there's a way in which in my business community or in the people that I just interact with, networking, whatever, I have to think about, who do I share this part of my life with? Do I share the fact that I'm in relationship with a non-binary person? Do I share the fact that we have children together? Do I share the fact, like, how much of myself do I share? How much of myself do I hold back? How much do I constantly have to sort of like question? How much of myself do I put forward? And anytime that you're minimizing part of yourself, all of a sudden the connection that you will have isn't going to be as strong with the person. That's going to minimize the relationship. That's going to minimize the kind of strength of that relationship and the way in which you can build relationships with each other and build your business and all of that. So it's like, how important is it for them to prioritize this? Well, if you want the whole human being to be across the table from you, to be sitting in the chair across from you, or to be a collaborator with you in another business, then you need to do that. And if not, you're leaving at least half the person behind.
So powerful, Keenan. And again, I think it matters. How you present matters, right? Like to the human eye. And so you, again, you can sort of navigate, I suspect, as a cisgender, heterosexual, nuclear.
I can pass very well.
Yes.
I can pass very well. It's something that my partners both say to me. They're just like, because for a while I was like not caring who I told what to about my family. And I would get weird looks and I'd have to, and then my partners were like, I know you're a cis white man. You may want to like pay attention a little bit more. And just like, oh yeah, I haven't ever really had to. Mm-hmm. Because I can pass, I don't have to share this part of myself.
Right.
No.
Right. No, because you get to kind of, that was one thing, because my mom too, she didn't have to say anything. And she didn't for a very long time, because we lived in a very bigoted place. But certainly, and so for some of you have that, right, that you don't necessarily have to, which is why people are like, why do people have to come out? But it's like, you don't have to, but it kind of is, a part of your identity. I'm curious though. I mean, obviously I think we all believe that the initiatives are there, to Jessica's point earlier, so that it's not a thing anymore. So you have to have the initiatives, obviously, to create a safe space for people, quite frankly, I think. And so is there anybody else that wants to speak on this? Yes, go ahead, Joan.
Sure. So a lot of my clients are bigger corporate clients, and they are, and I'm watching and participating in a lot of DE&I initiatives at the corporate level. There are BRG groups, business resource groups for LGBTQ people, and they're very welcome and open to allies joining and educating allies and having open programming within that larger corporate environment where people otherwise who are not LGBTQ adjacent at all might not otherwise have any experience at all with us, or they might pass one of us in the hall with our little rainbow badge on and just not ask any questions or not participate with us. But having these constant, like, there's emails about the events, there's just events year round, and certainly during Pride Month there are events, but including and creating allies at the corporate level, kind of, it filters down into communities too. Then when that same corporate employee is stopping at the local coffee shop that is openly gay owned with rainbow flags, they're going to have the language and the tools to talk with that owner and become, their ally, and maybe more than an ally, a friend, and all the other things. So I think more than we realize as small business owners, a lot of our counterparts and family members are employed in the much bigger, corporate world, and they're not small business owners. But the education and cultural knowledge is very important, that those initiatives are happening in those places, so that it can filter down through, more evenly across our culture versus just putting out into the world from our little satellites, okay, we're gay and this is what it's about, or we're queer and this is what it's about, or we're trans and this is what it's about, and here's how we use our pronouns. And but back to the pronoun conversation, it's one of the easiest, simplest, straightforward ways that any business, large or small, can put out a flag that's not a rainbow flag, but pretty darn close to it, just to let any of us know that, it is a more safe place to, be open and discuss ourselves and be our full selves and bring our full selves to that working role. As soon as we see that, little pronoun tag.
Yeah. No, I know when I put it on my own corporate email, I just wanted people to know. And so I, if it deters people, awesome. But I don't want to talk to those people anyway. But I find that is the case. I mean, even you see LinkedIn, a lot of social media made it available. I used to actually write next to my name, my pronouns, just because I wanted, in the past, even when I was younger, I might have been worried, what will they think, or are they going to be upset? And I really don't care. But I do it to be in solidarity and allyship. And I think that's a big point. I wanted to jump into the next question. We're cruising along. And again, for those that are here, please, if you have any questions, just drop them in the Q&A. So can you share any strategies, resources, and or approaches that you've used to create an inclusive and affirming workplace for both employees and customers? So we've talked about some of these. To Joan's point, the rainbow flags. I think those are people that it's like, okay, they have all the flags, right? For all the people, which is awesome. But then there might be some other strategies, tips, or tools, or any resources that you know about. So if anyone wants to share, and we'll make sure that if you have any links, we'll drop those in the chat. So is there anything that you think that would help people here? Because I would imagine that there's some people here that want to be better, right? And want to make sure they don't say the wrong thing, or how they can educate themselves. So I will defer to all of you.
Well, I think Joan is probably a great resource for this, being a representative of her chamber. If you don't know, you can call the chamber. You can call a PFLAG organization. You can say, I don't want to be rude. I want to be respectful. How do I do this? Where can I read? What can I do? I'm just trying to learn. Most LGBTQ people I've talked to, if a question comes from a place of honest curiosity out of respect, most everybody will answer and be completely okay with it. It doesn't need to be invasive. It can just be simple. And you always phrase it, well, how do I do this? How do I understand? What can I do better to respect you? I don't know, I'm sorry, but I want to know. So, I definitely want to hear Joan, because the local LGBT chambers are one of the best resources for these professionals.
Sure.
I'm gonna actually jump to the next question, because that's pretty much the same thing. So continue on, Joan.
Sure. Yeah, well, exactly, right. Specific networking organization. So yes, our LGBT Chamber of Commerce is a networking organization. It's a lot of what our activities are. what we do. And, our members provide services like cultural competency training. So you can say, okay, I have a business of 40 people or 400 people, and, I want to bring in a lunch and learn a couple times a year on cultural competencies. And I want them to learn and understand about pronouns and about different cultural differences that would help them be better allies and better employees and better, better in every possible way. So that's just one thing, you can do like active workshops, or you can provide links to online resources, blogs and other types of things, HRC things, NGLCC resources and materials that at least you can send out in an email or a newsletter that say, hey, we're especially taking advantage always of Black History Month, Pride Month, Trans Awareness Week, take advantage of all of those times and things to have a touch point with your employees and your customers. Like, hey, if you have questions, here's some things that I know that I want to share with you. So there's, lots of ways. And if you're not sure what might fit your business yet, look for your local chamber if there is one, or go right to the national and ask questions, send an email, get on our social media, just follow and share. Even we've pre-prepared things, for you. Like all you have to do is go and share it on your own pages. And then, your viewers, your customers will see that you're inclusive. You don't have to do all the legwork of finding out the information, making a graphic, making a story, making the content. It's out there.
Yeah, that's very helpful, I think, because people in recent years, of course, we are a capitalist society. Rainbow washing is a big thing. If you don't know what rainbow washing is, it's basically, rainbowifying all of their logos and tags. And so like to show that they're supportive only in the month of June, because we see this in Black History Month as well, same thing. And then it goes away, right? It's not like something ongoing. And so I think that working with these organizations outside of June, from July through May, as well, to see what you can do is very helpful. Did someone? Oh yeah, go ahead, Dr. Saida.
I think when I heard this question, I came at it from a different direction. Just because if you look at me, I don't have the ability to be like, oh, I'm not gay. It's like pretty obvious. It's okay. And so I've instead, one of the ways that I've heard people talk is like outside in resources, like resources that we can use from the external to implement into a system, which I love. Thank you, by the way. And one of the strategies that I use is an inside out. Okay, so it's like, is this something that I have to do on the fly immediately? As soon as I see someone walk in the door, my first strategy is to give them the biggest smile I possibly can and say to them, hello, how are you, by their name. And eye contact, and the way that I greet myself, the way that I express myself with people is super important, because when people see me, they have the option to either see me as a threat or see me as an ally. And how I bypass that is by my presence. Does that make sense so far?
Perfect sense.
Yeah, so that's just like a strategy that we can all implement like today, like literally right now. It's just like when we see somebody that we're like, well, we're not sure about them, I identify our own personal biases and then like overcome and be the brave one, right? If we're the business owners, we're the brave ones, we're the entrepreneurs, we're the step forward. But yeah, that's all.
And I'd like to mention, when we're talking specific networking organizations, the LGBT, like we said, the LGBT chambers are great, but sometimes there's more local coalitions. I'm very proud to be the president and just launched the Pride Construction Coalition in Tampa. We have received such a warm welcome. The mayor made it last minute to speak. We had about 60 plus attendees. They were from the construction industry or supported the construction industry. I can't tell you how many times I got pulled aside and said, thank you. This is a space we feel safe in. This is where we can talk to other construction professionals. We're just there to talk about kitchen cabinet pricing. We're just there to talk about light fixtures. We're just there to talk about architectural design. We're there to say that we're here in Florida. You see it in New York has Build Out Alliance, and they do fantastic work. And they have an organization in LA that's the same thing, that they have Build Out Alliance, but we don't have this in Florida. So if you're in an area where you don't have a lot of that, and you think you're the only one, you're not. Get out there and start your own organization, or start working with the other local organizations and have a specialty and offer that place for people to talk. We put together an event in 3 weeks, and now we're getting statewide requests to make other appearances in other cities in Florida. That is so empowering to talk to everybody that just, they're happy. They're just excited now that they can be themselves in their own industry.
I am so sorry. The screen stopped sharing. Yes. Sorry, I loved it. I was multitasking. Our screen went down. We had technical difficulties. So yes, oh, sorry, this was the next question. But yeah, but definitely, Tommy, 100%. I think that you're valid. And I love that you brought up the point of bias based on like what you would do in that space of what professions one who identifies as LGBTQIA plus would do presumably. So I think that is also something. I think just constantly biases. I have my own, like I said, it's just constant of deprogramming and understanding and really trying to see people for who they are.
We all have those biases. I can overcome them sometimes just talking about what my husband and I had for dinner. You want to know what's universal? Arguing about what's for dinner tonight.
It's true.
Every couple does that. You just humanize us. That's it.
That's true. No, it's very true. Especially I have a lot of allergies. So yeah. So how do you handle, we only have just a couple more questions and then we're going to jump right into Q&A. How do you handle situations where you face discrimination or bias in your professional life, and what strategies have worked for you in navigating these challenges? So I would imagine at some point you all have faced something specific. You can get as specific as you want. But I would, really, I think for people watching this, they might have been the offender or somebody else might just have dealt with this and doesn't know how to continue working on this. And I'm just thinking of a past coworker myself who had a lot of discrimination against them. But does anyone have anything specific they'd want to share? I definitely, oh, go ahead, Dr. Seda. And then, yeah.
I physically touch people for a living. So that's a really interesting situation. There's been multiple times, specifically actually in Peru, it would happen where people didn't want to work with me just because of the way I look. And it sucks because I'm really passionate about what I do, but it's like if someone isn't brave enough to, or isn't wanting or willing or capable of working with me, it hurts my feelings. I don't think that I found a way to overcome it yet. It just hurts, honestly. So if you guys have any idea of how to overcome it, that'd be great, because I'm still stuck in the ow, that hurt. But yeah, it sucks. It happens all the time.
That's well, I want to say sorry, truly sorry for that, sending you hugs virtually, because that, just harm in general, right? It just, whether the intention is there, there's still the impact. And so I can imagine in that position that exactly being a chiropractor and having to deal with folks who would have those thoughts, right? Or even if you don't present a certain way, but then people find out, right? I mean, I've heard that as well, as like, oh, they make these assumptions and it's just hurtful. So I would say, at least from my perspective, speak up. If someone is doing this, like in an environment, a group environment, be the person to speak up, have bravery, because it's really easy to go under the fray and not say anything. And also show that person an overwhelming amount of kindness. I can speak from my identities. So I know, how that feels. Or someone even saying jokes, right, that are supposed to be okay, and you don't want to seem hypersensitive, but it still impacts you. And it can impact performance, as well. So and I mean, I would say too, we used to have a trans man that used to work in my office. God, this is maybe 15 years ago, right? So it was a little bit different. To Jessica's point, things have evolved a little bit. We're doing a little bit better than we were. But my goodness, they went as far to say, like, basically like a swear jar every time they misgendered him, but they were saying it as a joke. Like it was like, oh, whoops, sorry. And just was constantly, it was constant. And they played it off cool, but it was hard for me to watch that. So be kind, people. That's all we ask. And if people want you to call them by a certain name or pronoun, just do it. Just do what they ask you. Yeah, but that's but thank you for sharing that, Dr. Saida. So again, you know, just overall, if anyone has specific BNI experiences, I know I've heard people before within their identities, and they've said everyone was really great. It sounds like there was a chapter in Jessica's region. I know that they have some in San Diego, in San Francisco, and Chicago that have been very LGBTQ plus friendly in a welcome space. And then there's some people that have other things that have happened. You know, so just, does anyone have anything specific, like how your experience, obviously you're all here because BNI is awesome. But I don't know, or even if you can share with us just some things that might not be appropriate specifically in BNI. I don't know if it, because there's people again here that I think are probably wondering.
So oddly enough, I had invites to come to a couple of BNI chapters, and I saw our president, who is a gay man, post in an LGBT professional group. I'd always kind of thought most of these business groups are super conservative, especially in the South. And I went to this group and he wasn't even the only LGBT person in the room. So I didn't even go to other chapters, and this chapter was much smaller than what other chapters I had been recommended to attend. And I just thought, you know what? At the very least, at least I know I'm welcome. I could talk about my husband. We could talk about our kid. You know, it'll be great. So I have found that everybody that I've met in BNI has been overwhelmingly welcome. They ask questions, they want to know, they want to support. I've seen a couple of them pop up on the chat here that are viewing today. So I've had a great experience with BNI and just expressing myself. So usually it's 5 minutes about yourself or your family, but then you're on to talking about something else in business, and everybody's more curious about how fast can I get my kitchen done than they are talking about family chat anyways.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. Love that you've had that experience. So we have only a little time. We've zipped through everything.
I'll share a quick BNI experience if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, please.
So when I first joined my chapter in Boulder, there was a decent amount of LGBTQ plus people in the group, and that felt really good and safe and just sort of like, okay, this is great. The chapter I'm currently in, it's a lot of straight people, and so that's a little bit challenging. But what really was like sort of eye-opening and felt just this giant wave of relief is while I was in my chapter in Boulder, one of the people I had like recently joined, one of the people who was in the group was doing a feature presentation. His name is John Hawley. He is a conscious family law and mediation. Sticks in there. He was doing his feature presentation, and turns out he's poly, and was totally open about it and did it as a part of, oh, here's my family and here's this and here's that. And I was like I knew I was up in like 8 weeks to do my feature presentation. I was like, oh, do I share this? Do I not share this? And seeing him just totally own it and share it was just like, okay, I guess I can do this. This is going to be wild and weird. And first time I'm really out in a business setting. But it felt, there was a wave of just relief seeing him do that.
That's fantastic. So both of you, it sounds like when someone else stepped up to the plate and was already out, or just being their true selves, it made it easier, which is what we hear time and time again. Representation does make a difference. It does make it a little easier. So that is great to know. We are coming up on time. So we have right now the Q&A portion. So if we do have a question here, to my executive producer, is this something that I can't even pull it up. Okay. So from Charlie. So if you had to choose one thing BNI members could do to be more inclusive to incoming members who may identify as LGBTQ+, what would it be? Does anyone want to answer that?
Yeah, as pronouns.
Yeah.
Simplest, as pronouns.
Yeah, that's my go-to.
And don't ask what are your preferred pronouns, just what are your pronouns?
Yeah, what are your pronouns? I love, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not preferred, they are. They are or they aren't, right?
Right. The other thing I will add is to not make assumptions. Some people don't use pronouns. So my sister doesn't really use pronouns. And she'll go by she, her, but she doesn't really use them, and she's non-binary. So yeah, I mean, so some people just are like whatever to pronouns. So that's also something to keep in mind. Anyone else have any other questions? I have a question, maybe I'd say maybe Dr. Saida, and anyone else that has multiple identities, marginalized identities, if you will. I hate using the term marginalized. But if within the realm of intersectionality, if you hold many, and maybe for Keenan too, because Keenan is also Jewish, you know, how do those play a part with each other, like within your communities? And maybe for Dr. Saida, you know, being Latinx, as well as being, you know, as identifying as queer, like, I'm just curious if those have impacts on each other. So I don't know if Dr. Saida has anything like,
Do they have on each other? You know, it's really interesting because I don't really remember that I'm Hispanic or queer until somebody else points it out.
mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like I'm living my happiest human life, and at the same time, there is this balance though where how to explain this? More of what's happening is what the trauma that happens internally because of the identities, right? Because of the way, not that how I feel about them, but the way that other people have felt about them and the struggles that I've had to face because of how other people feel about them. So that's a really tough question. It's a good question. But story short, I don't see myself as a gay Hispanic woman. I see myself as a human. And then whenever I'm like in the world and look around me and start to compare myself, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, I am gay. And I'm like, oh yeah, I am Mexican. It's hard though. It's hard out here for a G, but I think I've been doing it my whole life. So it's just second nature now.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that answer. That's awesome. I don't know if you had anything else to add to that, Keenan. I was just curious because I thought about it just from our conversations.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I also don't know. It's like thinking off the top of my head. I'll say, Dr. Saida, I like what you said of like, oh, we're just a human. And I think there's truth to that. For me, and I think there's such beautiful, rich culture in both of those worlds that feels like potent and powerful. And in a way, they sort of like build with each other. And in the same way, am I totally out within like the mainstream Jewish community in this area? No, not totally. And so I think because of the prejudices that Jews hold against things, not all, definitely some mainstream for sure, but like, I think it's like an added interesting layer. But I think something, maybe I will say this, like what comes from, not what comes from, but what comes with privilege generally is isolation. And so something that I'm really grateful for. So if you're people who are white generally are conditioned to be far more isolated from each other and from other people, period. People who are straight are going to be far more isolated from each other and from other people, period. People who are men, far more isolated. That is a sort of part of the domination patterning. In order to dominate, I need to be isolated because I can't dominate if I'm actually connected to people. That's part of the way it works, part of the patterning. And so I'm really grateful that I have the connection aspect of being Jewish, that it is baked into the cake, that you come together and that you're with people and you're with family. And it is like, you know, this area where I'm living is very white and very Christian. And it's very obvious that just in the way in which I interact with my neighbors, it's like, oh, I can like very easily flow into a conversation with anybody. And some people are just like, oh, just sort of like frozen faces. And so I'm grateful that I don't have that. And so I think that's something of the way in which being Jewish and being not straight come together in a beautiful way that's helpful for me and is a resource for myself.
Fantastic. Love it. Thank you for both taking on that question. Okay, so I want to thank our guests. No one go anywhere because there's still more information left just to let you all know. But thank you to our guests, to Joan, to Keenan, to Dr. Saida, to Tommy, and to Jessica. This was fantastic. I think that our viewers are going to get a lot of this, those who haven't watched yet and those that are here. Just a tremendous amount of information, and just thank you for your time and just doing this service for us. We really appreciate it. Next month, we are going to talk about social media and for business and in DEI. So like really the balance of being able to market, and we have some really amazing marketing people. It's going to be a good social media chat as well, like just what for your business. So it's an added bonus that we'll talk about DEI. So that is there. I suspect that Steve dropped that link in the chat. Also, we would be remiss if we did not mention that Juneteenth is this Monday. Only since 2020, we are grateful that there's a light shined on the day that actually everybody was free-ish. So June 19th, of course, the day that in Galveston, Texas, the last slaves were told that they were free. And so we want to just honor that. You know, feel free to let us know in the chat or in the comments on YouTube, you know, how are you going to be celebrating Juneteenth? So we wanted to honor that as well. So, so thank you all for that. And that is it.